Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the channel and welcome to the first GT Sport Daily Race C strategy guide for 2022, and PD for the very first race of the year have taken us to a very familiar combination indeed, as Group 3 cars visit Dragon Trail Seaside for 12 laps with tyre wear at ×6, fuel at ×2, soft and medium tyres available, both of which should be mandatory, BOP is on, damage is off, it's a rolling start and slipstream is real. As I said, a familiar combo for the game, not so much as a daily race C, but certainly as a daily race B and for FIA. I am not a huge fan of this track to race on, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I find that I'm not very consistent at it, and I think too much of the lap time depends on the chicane of death, or the death chicane, or whatever you want to call it. I think from now on I'm going to call it the chicane of souls, because 4 years into this game's life, I think everyone who's ever played the game has certainly lost a few souls at that chicane. So from now on I'm going to call it the chicane of souls, and maybe there'll be a little memorial in GT7 to commemorate all those souls claimed by said chicane. So as you may well have guessed from the thumbnail, the test car for this one is going to be the Toyota Supra. It is very much the meta car around this track as far as I am aware. I think along with the Aston Martin, it is definitely the best car for the combination. There should be some other cars we can take a look at, we will do so a little bit later on in the video. The Supra can be quite a tricky car to drive at the end of the day, and may not well be suited to everyone out there. But moving on to the strategy element of the video, first strategy we're going to take a look at is the soft medium strategy. The soft medium strategy is generally very simple. Set a benchmark lap time on the medium tyres, get a rough idea as into what kind of lap time you are capable of on the medium tyres. Take a couple of attempts off that to adjust for when you move on to those medium tyres, you're going to have a slightly lower fuel, and then you run the soft tyres basically till you get to that lap time. My kind of crossover lap time from the test I did earlier on was a 1:38.1, so once we kind of get to start doing lap times in that region, we know it's time to move off those worn softs and bowl on a set of fresh mediums. And we're going to get to that lap time around about lap 6 on this run. Now, my kind of problem with consistency has a little bit came into the fore here. The first lap we did there, the first flying lap of 1:37.1, fairly decent. Lap 3 probably should have been a little bit faster than a 37.5, and then we just didn't quite hook up laps 4 and 5. Probably should have been in the mid 37s rather than the late 37s. As we come through the chicane of souls there on lap number 6, the Supra doesn't seem to enjoy the curbs there too much. We get a little bit of a bounce, clip the wall, and yeah, I was definitely starting to lose these tyres a little bit. Definitely seemed like lap 6 was the optimal time for the Supra to come into the pits, get off those worn softs and bolt on a fresh set of mediums. So into the pits we come now, and as you can see from the little scroll at the bottom there, a regular pit crew, they've been missing since New Year, last seen in the Tokyo Sake Bar. They will pay the price for that, so look forward to what they've got to say about that next week. But the pit loss comes in at 17.5 seconds. That's measured all the way down to turn number 1, just about the 150 metre board. Exiting the pits you can brake at about the 100 metre board. Do be careful though, the tyres won't be quite up to temperature as you turn into there, and do be careful of cars coming down start finish straight who have not just pitted. They will arrive at turn 1 at a much greater speed than your car exiting the pits, so try to be courteous. It's one of these difficult situations that you have to deal with, and of course drivers will be looking to kind of try and complete that overtake on you as you're exiting the pits, which can always be a little bit awkward. So let's see how these medium tyres have held up in terms of pace and life, and we can see in terms of pace we kind of got the sort of pit time there spot on. Our first flying lap of 1:37.9, kind of matching the sort of lap times we're starting to do on the soft tyres towards the end of the stint. The medium tyres feel a lot more consistent than the soft tyres, not unexpectedly to be honest with you. The soft tyres do seem to wear quite quickly around this track, despite the fact there's not a massive amount of corners. It does seem to be a track that does eat through the tyres. But yeah, the medium tyres will be nice and consistent all the way through the stint, right towards the end. No problem getting 6 decent laps out of the mediums. As we come up to the start finish line here, we will complete our first race run and we'll get an idea of the finishing time. So that should just be about to pop up now. There we go, just over the 20-minute mark. So a decent length of race for Daily Race C this week. Always nice when we get closer to the 20-minute mark than something like 17, 18 minutes. That's the soft medium strategy dealt with. Let's move on to the medium soft now. And again, the kind of key to the medium soft strategy is to kind of balance that undercut, or how big of an undercut you get, with how worn your tyres are going to be towards the end. So we decided on this run here, we're going to pit at the end of lap number 4. We know we can do 6 laps fairly comfortably on the soft tyres with full fuel. So if we do the soft tyres on the second stint and we've got a little bit of that fuel burnt off, we should at least be able to do 7 laps at the very least. I want to try and stretch out a little bit further, go for the 8 laps. And to be honest with you, the tyres have held up not too bad once the car is that little bit lighter. Maybe losing around about a second in pace over the course of the 8 lap stint. Now, you can go earlier than lap 4, absolutely no two doubts about that. Lap 2, 3, 1 if you really wanted to. But of course then you end up with very worn tyres towards the end. And this is not a track where it's difficult to overtake. And if you're struggling with tyres towards the end, you're just going to get eaten up by cars on fresher tyres if you really start to struggle in the biggest possible way. So as I said, it's always that balancing act when you do the medium soft strategy. Do you go for, you know, how big an undercut are you willing to risk, and are you able to hold on with the worn tyres at the end? Optimally, I think this strategy is either lap 4 or 5 for most people. If you're pretty good on tyres like myself, lap 4 should be more comfortable for somebody that's pretty decent on tyres. For a lot of players out there, I think you'll be more comfortable on a lap 5. But of course, the later you pit, if you leave it as late as lap number 5, then you are kind of exposing yourself to be undercut by anybody who has pitted that a little bit earlier, which is always the risk with this strategy. But yeah, fairly simple. Optimal lap 4-5. Earlier you go, the bigger undercut you get, but you risk the tyres towards the end. Finishing time for that second run coming in at the 20-minute mark as well, so not too bad. 2 race runs there, complete race runs, and we've lapped within, or finished the race within 3 tenths of each other. So as I said earlier, the Supra is not that nice a car to drive for some people. I don't particularly like it, so I was quite curious to sort of jump out in something else and see what we could do in that. And in this case, we have chosen the other Toyota, the FT1 this time. Now, I wasn't intending doing the full race run here. I just wanted to jump in, do a few laps and see how it compared to the Supra. But I am very comfortable in the FT1, and it turned out we ended up doing the full race run. Now we do make a little bit of an error here into turn number 1 on the first lap. Probably to be expected, you know, we're used to driving the Supra prior to this. This is our very first corners in the car, let alone laps. But we ended up, as I said, doing the full race run, and I just felt much more comfortable in this car, and that is reflected in the lap times. We're just about to jump forward here to lap number 6 as we complete the first sector. And you can see our best lap on the medium tyres was a 1:38.0, which was actually quicker than any lap we did on the medium tyres with the Supra. So particularly through this sector here, the FT1 was very nice. Much easier to kind of be committed on the throttle through the last sector, the last sweeping curve of that sort of middle part of the lap. And yeah, I just found it much more comfortable coming through the chicane of Soles as well. On the curbs, seemed to be much more comfortable. The Supra seemed really bouncy, like I had kind of slightly softer suspension. But the biggest advantage of the FT1 that I could see was that despite the fact its tyre wear looked very similar to the Supra on the soft tyres, the lap times held up much more comfortably. We did do a pretty poor lap there on lap 11 in all fairness, but I think we finished with a 37.6. So yeah, the drop off in lap time with the FT1 compared to the Supra just felt much more manageable to me. Just an easier car to drive. The Supra, I'm not doubting, probably the quickest car for the combination, but it does look to me that other cars should be usable. If the FT1's good, then the Beetle should be pretty good as well. It's good on tyres, and maybe even something like the RCZ might prove to be a little bit of a surprise. It is an MR car, so those rear tyres might prove troublesome, but it's very stable and very easy to drive, and I think it could be quite handy around this combination. One little comparison I just wanted to throw up on the screen here was the tyre wear on the softs after 7 laps with the Supra and the FT1. You can see very similar indeed, but the sort of Toyota, the FT1 was so much easier to drive on the worn tyres compared to the Supra. It just goes to show that maybe that indicator is not telling the whole story, and sometimes it's all about the car, or more about the car rather than the actual tyre wear, because the FT1, once the tyres wore down, just seemed to carry on, be quite consistent compared to the Supra, which really did feel like it was changing from lap to lap. So we move on to that part of the video where we just kind of reiterate everything that we have learnt so far, kind of briefly go over the strategies again, and I'll give you some sort of pros and cons and how I see this one working out. So going back to the soft medium strategy, the soft tyres seem to go off very quickly, especially on the Supra. The crossover lap from worn soft to fresh mediums appears to be around about lap 6 for the Supra, although more tyre friendly cars could stretch that out to lap 7, something like the FT1 that we're looking at, or the Beetle as well. Maybe even the Mazda, the new Mazda RX Vision, although this being a power circuit and it not being very good in a straight line might not be that well suited to the actual layout of the track. But yeah, it is good on tyres, so tyre wear sometimes trumps power. Of course, only really want to be starting on the soft tyres towards the front of the grid where you can maximise that soft tyre potential. You start any further back than P5, 6, then you do run the risk of just getting involved in too much fighting. That's going to slow you down. You don't get the benefit of the soft tyres, and you just get undercut by all the medium runners who start towards the middle of the grid or the rear. Moving on to the medium soft strategy, as I've said several times over, this is all about that balance of how big an undercut do you get compared to how bad the tyres are at the end. The optimal lap for me is lap 4 or 5, depending on how good you are on tyres, but it's definitely possible to go early and just hold on with the worn tyres towards the end. But as I said earlier as well, this is not a track that's hard to overtake on. Turn 1 and turn 7, both easy to get a move done on a car that is struggling with tyres. So if you do pit very early and you don't manage to maximise that strategy, then you're going to be in big trouble towards the end of the race. So I think I've covered everything I want to cover in terms of strategy. Let's move on to our lap guide in the Toyota Supra as we approach turn number 1 on Dragon Trail Seaside. We're looking for the 150 metre board. You can brake just beyond that. Try and get all your braking and everything done before you turn into the first part of this chicane. Almost roll the car through the corner. Sacrifice a little bit on the entry to get a much better exit. As we come down to turn number 3 here, a little confidence lift on the medium tyres might be required, or it can see you run wide. The dark patch of grass on the left hand side of the track is your braking marker for the 90-degree right hander. As we come up the hill towards the fast left, right, left, you look to get all your braking and slowing down done here on the first left hander, so you can then accelerate through the right hander and all the way up through the left hander, taking you all the way up over the crest of the hill and down into the big braking zone. It does provide a good overtaking opportunity. You're looking for the 150 metre board. You can brake just after it here, get all your braking done in a straight line, tuck the corner car in nice and tight to the corner, don't run all the way wide until you're all the way through the second part of that tight corner there. Then we're coming towards the chicane of Souls. I'm not going to tell you how to do this here because I am absolutely hopeless at it. On this occasion though, we do sort of navigate the car through there very nicely indeed. Do look out for lap guides from Digit and Tidgeney to kind of give you much better reference points for how to negotiate the chicane of Souls. 100 metre board for the last corner. Very easy to be too aggressive on the brakes and turn into this corner at the same time and induce a lot of understeer, so do try to kind of minimise that. But that's a lap guide of Dragon Trail Seaside in the Toyota Supra from Group 3. Hopefully it's been helpful in some way, shape or form, and the guide overall has been helpful in some way, shape or form. This should be a fairly interesting race. I don't do a lot of Daily Race B or FIA these days, so feels relatively fresh for me. It's a long while since I've driven a Group 3 car around this track, so I'm looking forward to it, despite the fact I'm not a big fan of racing around here just because I'm not that consistent. I'm not a huge fan of the chicane of Souls either, but we will delve into this, use some different cars on various accounts, have some fun. Hopefully the Supra doesn't just become the absolute meta and we can sort of jump in something like the FT1 or the RCZ or maybe even the BMW or the Lexus or something like that. That's my hope anyway. But as I put this guide together, I'm actually off for 7 days, so there's no excuses for not live streaming this one at least 3 times over the course of the next week. So do join me for that if you can. If you like what we're doing on the channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I shall see you on the next one. Good luck out there folks, and goodbye.